And just noticing the pose that you're taking at this moment, how the body is a body straight and proud. It's a body slouching a little bit. And again, if there's rigidity in the body, then just allowing the body to be comfortable. Just give you a couple of minutes to get all settled here. If you like to close your eyes, you may. And if not, then just leaving them slightly open. That's fine too. Beginning by noticing the overall energy in the body. There might be a lot of thinking coming in, a lot of planning, whatever it might be, just noticing what's here without judgment. So there's no particular way that things have to be right now. However they're showing up, they're perfect in this moment. We're just noticing. And as you notice, just checking in and coming right back to seeing this body breathe, to becoming one with the breath. Sensing the in-breath, the out-breath. Perhaps just allowing the body to really gently sink into the surface that's supporting you. And so just allowing gravity to do its thing. If you're noticing tension or tightness anywhere in the body, maybe just inviting it to soften. So just softening into the moment. Allowing the body to guide you into noticing, is there trust in the surface holding you? Is the body still rigid, cautious? And is it okay for it to soften a little more? And so with every out breath, just softening a little more, allowing the body to just become heavy, allowing the body to almost leave an imprint, as if you were in a sandy beach and just sitting there and the body just settles, leaves an imprint in the sand if you're lying or sitting. In the same way, just allowing it to just rest right here at this moment. Nothing to do, nowhere to go but being here, present. And whatever thoughts might be forming in the mind, just knowing that there are just thoughts, they pass. So just allowing them to pass and noticing how one thought passes and another one comes up. But if you find yourself caught in a narrative during the pause, during the silence, if there's a story taking you away, or maybe just taking in a deeper than normal breath, shifting your pose can help. And then just coming right back to staying right here in this moment, noticing this breath. The formula, it's in the same way. There's one in breath, one out breath, following this cycle of the breath. And just noticing how the body starts to soften after a little while of breathing or noticing the breath. Well, nothing you need to do. So you sit here with the breath just for a little bit. Now expanding your attention to your feet. And just without moving them, without having to do anything about your feet, just noticing that there is feet here. Perhaps you might notice the warmth or the coolness, the moisture. And so becoming aware of your feet. There might be stories playing in the mind, such as I can never feel my feet, or it's uncomfortable to feel my feet. Just doing what you can, noticing the thoughts, noticing the stories. Coming right back to the sense of feet. Noticing any other sensations here in the feet. Numbness, maybe nothing at all. That's okay too. Becoming aware of that. The absence of sensation, something to notice as well. And if your feet are in contact with the ground, or any part of the foot is in contact with the ground, just pretending that there's big roots from the feet going down into the earth. If you're sitting or lying, just noticing the areas that might be in contact with the surface, rooted right into the earth, sensing through these areas, allowing the earth to support you, cradle you. And with each out breath, softening a little more into this moment. Allowing for a sense of ease. And now becoming aware of all those invisible forces that are supporting you in this moment. Gravity, keeping you in place. Noticing how gravity feels in the body. And you can sense it through the heaviness in the body. In touch with the surface and the ground and the earth. Keeping you right here connected. And sensing the oxygen that comes in on the breath. Another vital invisible force. Keeping this body alive. And that connection through the nostrils. As the breath comes in and goes out. Taking in the oxygen. And giving out to the earth as well on the out breath. Now becoming aware of your connection to an earth element of fire. Noticing if there's heat in the body or coolness. And so just noticing how this element keeps you warm or cools you down. So for the next few moments, just dwelling right here in the experiential of being in this body, that's part of this earth, that's fully connected to everything around you. And perhaps just noticing what that connection feels like right now, to be fully supported in this way. Maybe the mind is checked out a while back and your attention has drifted into stories, things to do, whatever it might be. Acknowledging that and acknowledging that every time you notice this on your own, it's a mindful moment. So, with a big smile, every time you notice, it's coming right back to this experience. Tapping into this inner sense of connection that's longer forgotten often. Noticing what it's like to just being. Now allowing every cell in your body to recognize what it's like to be in this state of being without agenda. Nothing to do, nothing to say, but just being here in your experience, in this deep connection to all and everything. Tapping into your place of wisdom, away from the habit of the mind. What is it like for you to dwell in just being? By really being here right now and experiencing it, really imprinting this way of being in yourself, carrying it over moment to moment, despite change, despite circumstances. Connected to your true wisdom. Denise Levertov, in her poem Aware, says, "When I found the door, I found the vine leaves speaking among themselves in abundant whispers. My presence made them hush their green breath. Made them hush their green breath, embarrassed. The way humans stand up, buttoning their jackets, acting as if they were leaving anyway, as if the conversation had ended just before you arrived. I liked the glimpse I had. Right though of their obscure gestures, I like the sound of such a private voices. Next time, I'll move like cautious sunlight, open the door by fractions, eavesdrop peacefully." So whenever you're ready, as we come to the end of this practice, just allowing yourself to take a deeper than normal breath. Perhaps inform the next move from this place of wisdom, seeing what the body needs. Does it need to shift? Does it need to stretch a little bit? What does it need in this moment? And then just moving, adjusting, gently opening your eyes if that feels right. Taking a look around at where you are. And then really gently and slowly just coming back to the group. Noticing everybody that's here. So I was sharing today how this practice, this trust emergence practice, is very, very alive for me now, and it's been for the last couple of weeks. And cultivating this practice for me has been a real gift. This is the work of Gregory Kramer. And today I just wanted to talk about a part of the practice that I think aligns with what we've been talking about all these weeks, which is trust. And this part used to be called trust emergence, and it changed to attuned to emergence. And so when so the word attune, attending, it means like attending to the impermanence of thoughts and feelings, entering the relational moment without an agenda. So kind of entering the do not know mind when we're in this place, right? To just being, not knowing what's next, not rehearsing anything. And the emergence is a process, he says, by which the complex things we experience arise spontaneously from underlying contributing factors. So there is a deep wisdom that we all hold away from the mind, away from the stories, the habits. And so we're tuning into that in this moment. Just like we tuned into the body and notice its own wisdom during our practice. So the idea to meet the moment with mindfulness, presence, and to notice the changes that might come in. Because what I've experienced, again, in my own experience, I've experienced that when I go into a moment, there's already an expectation of how it's going to go. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I always think, okay, this is how it's going to go. And then what happens when things don't go that way? I feel a little bit like I'm thrown off a little bit, like I'm a little confused of what just happened. And what I've noticed is in that moment of confusion of what's happening, while my mind is trying to gather itself into understanding, there's always an impulse of the mind to react, right? A long time ago, I learned that when a person is in a car accident, for instance, or something that is shocking, in the moment of shock, their subconscious is wide open. And at that moment, we can tell them anything and they'll believe it. And so this is how a lot of the times people use that to frame others, or, we see this sometimes in documentaries and things like that, that at that moment, you can say to someone, yeah, you saw that person do it. You saw they did it. And because the mind is so open and there's no filtering, it takes it in as a truth. That's right. I saw them. He did it, right? Whether it's a crime or something else, that sometimes happens sometimes, because the mind is so wide open that it takes whatever is said at that moment into a reality. It believes it, right? And so this is what happens when we're expecting something and things don't go in that way. The impact might not be as shocking as, an accident or something that is, traumatizing, but it's still the mind is trying to figure out what just happened. And so it's looking for resources to react and fix or go to whatever it knows on how to allow you to survive. So maybe I'll just share a personal experience I had with this and what led to this practice today. A couple of weeks ago, I was co-teaching a class with another facilitator, and we had everything planned out, of course, for the class, the timings and everything when, was going to go a certain way. And in my mind, everything was going great. Well, I guess at some point, the other facilitator had noticed something that might have been triggering for her in her experience within the context of the class. And at the end of the class, I thought everything was perfect, and I was just really excited. It's like, oh, how did that go for you? And so it's really caught off by how hard it had been for her and the reactive part of herself coming in, about what she had observed in the class. I was caught off guard at that moment. And so I noticed that I wasn't prepared to respond or anything. And I noticed myself going into this little bit of shock of just seeing how activated this person was by, the participants in the class. And of course, my mind, I noticed that my mind was trying to look for ways to maybe kind of direct her in a direction that was maybe a little more peaceful, a little softer. And that's doing, even if we think that that's beneficial to someone else at that moment, that was doing. And that was really, at the end, what it is a question, am I doing this for me or for that person? Right? For me, it was because I was caught off guard. And so it's able to step back from that. And this is when we're talking about attune to emergence or trust in the moment, right? If we're able to just in the inside dialogue, we learn to pause for a moment. And for me, that pause was simply just taking back a little bit, a couple steps back, I would say, in place, and noticing what was happening without asking any questions. I was just noticing that experience she had and holding space for that, right? So there's a pause again. I was breathing well. I was noticing what was happening. And then again, there's that tension that I felt in my body, like, oh no, what happened? And then within the breaths, I notice a tension. And then the second step is to relax. And relax, they say, is to the mind, is acceptance of what's happening. In this relaxation, right? When we relax, we notice the body, the tension. Accepting that tension allows the body to kind of just soften a little bit. And they say that relax to the body is like acceptance to the mind. And so accepting that that's what was happening, that I didn't have to change anything, that I didn't have to do anything about it in that moment, because this person just wanted to be heard, So when she spoke, I had time to kind of just self-regulate and see what's happening. And at some moment, I just decided to throw the agenda out, right? I didn't have to fix anything. I didn't have to help her. I didn't have to bring her to a place of ease or calmness. I knew that she was capable of doing that on her own. It might take a little time, but she was going to get there eventually if I just sat there in that moment. And so there's a sense of trust, isn't it, that comes in with that too. And I'm going to put in parentheses here that I'm not saying this is not something that we might do if we're in danger of somebody's attacking us, okay? So here's a discernment. Again, I always like to say that just in case. We're just talking about a regular conversation or an everyday life, something mild that might have happened that might not need us to really go into full gear of fixing or helping or doing anything like that. But we can look back and allow people to have their experience. And so there's some things that I noticed with this attunement to emergence, that when I was able to follow these steps, right? Listening, I went into listening then, listening with my ears, my body, with everything. My entire being was listening to my experience, listening to this person's experience at the same time. So deep listening is part of inside dialogue. We're just deeply listening, right? And then what happens when we trust our emergence? We come from this place of wisdom, not the habitual self, but there's a wisdom within when we turn towards ourselves. And then we're able to speak the truth. It's not really coming from the habit of the mind. It's not coming from an inclination that we have to do something to change the moment, but we're just deeply in there with them. And at that moment, wisdom takes over. And we can trust that our own wisdom will come through to hold space, right? And so at some point, I think the words, trusting emergence and really my truth was mainly to what came out without thinking was, I understand how you feel. That must have been hard for you to witness, right? So very different than my habitual, right? Because I wasn't caught in habit, but I was able to use these steps and to trust that I would have the guidance needed at that moment. So I wanted to share this with you because for me, it was very helpful to practice this practice of inside dialogue and trusting that there's something bigger than me that has the resources. And it reminded me of Dr. Gabor Mate. So as you all know, I train in compassionate inquiry. I'm trained, I should say now. I've been practicing for a little while now. And there's something that he used to always say when I was practicing, when I was learning from him, and I would always listen to him, and he would say, people would ask him, but how about step 1 and step 2 in compassionate inquiry? When do you do this? And he would always say, I just do what I do. It's important for you to learn the steps, but eventually your wisdom will come in and you will use everything you know. And this is when our mindfulness practice becomes really, really big. It's because we're practicing constantly this awareness. And so we know that there's resources that we've been cultivating, such as loving kindness and compassion, that are going to come when we need them, that are just going to get away from our habitual. And the more we do that, the more these habits start to lessen for us, and the more we become just this wisdom, right? And that's a long stretch. And I'm not here to tell you that I have it all figured out. No, gosh, I wish. This was just one example that kind of putting it together in my mind. I thought, like, wow, what came through me? And really was this practice at that moment. And so the more we practice, the more these things just become part of us. And so how do we access this wisdom and trust our own emergence? Well, first of all, noticing if there is an agenda. Notice if you're in conversation, even if you're listening to me, are you thinking maybe about what you're going to share next? Or is there an agenda? Is there's something that you want to really say really bad, that the mind wants to communicate? And who's that benefiting? What is the intention? We always go back to that. What is the intention of what I'm saying? And am I triggered? Right? Because triggers come in different ways. Some triggers makes us want to help, right? Fix, make sure that everybody's okay. That could be a trigger too. Triggers are not only causing us to be mad or angry or frustrating, but it's in a spectrum of things. And so just noticing if that's a habit. Okay, stepping back again, pausing, right? So these habitual ways show up when we're not prepared, when something catches us off guard. And so here's where this practice could be really helpful. And it really aligns a lot. I thought at that moment aligned a lot with this sense of what we're practicing, which is trust in this few weeks together. So I just wanted to leave you with that. And like I always say, take what you need, leave what you don't. These are just words. I'm just sharing my own experience with you and hoping that maybe in some way, I'm sure we all go through the same things, and maybe some of you can relate. So I do thank you so much for your deep kindness every week, listening, your compassion towards everybody in the group, in our community, towards me. Gosh knows I'm not perfect, and I really appreciate you. And so, yeah,